Mike's and I never get along. People named Mike I get along with. It's the instrument I don't get along with. When we look at the command of God to love him above all things and to love our neighbor as ourselves, a thing we might ask ourselves is, what is the source, the motivation for loving God? What brings us to love God? We don't choose to love God out of compassion for God or out of pity for God. We come to love God because we are grateful for what God has done for us. His love has come to us. And in response to that love, we respond by loving him because we have seen and heard and experienced what he has done for us, that he has made us, that he sustains our every breath, our every heartbeat, that he saves us from the power of sin and death, that he raises us up to be his children, to live in his image and likeness. And what is his image and likeness but love itself? To live in God's image isn't to live with a physical face of God that we resemble, but to live by his very dynamic. And at the heart of all things, God is love. So when we have gratitude for what has happened to us, it moves us then to respond. And the only way we can respond when we have truly grateful hearts is to love, is to look and to say, I owe this person something, not as a debt like our Visa or MasterCard bill that we feel we're just under the weight of, but rather from an energy within us that leads us to say, I am grateful for what I have received, and therefore I am faithful to the giver of the gifts I have received. And in that then, what happens is we come to love not simply by saying we fulfill all the laws because we're afraid of going to hell, but rather we fulfill the laws because it gives pleasure to God. It gives joy to God that we seek to receive what he has given us. He does not need it. He could be quite happy without our love, but he takes pleasure and joy in that love because it draws us into him. And he is the source of all that is good and all that brings us life. He is beyond the passing desires of this world to the truest, deepest desire of our souls. When we reflect upon why we love God, I think what happens for us is then that it's from an interior motivation, not something from outside that says you must love God. But we come to love God because we say it only makes sense to love him. It only makes sense for us to respond with a grateful heart to what he has given us. We never pay God back for all God has done for us. But what we do is we show that we are with him and seek to be in him. And even that itself is a gift from God. Our gratitude for what we have received is not something that just is for God. It draws us more into his life and into his love. And when we live with a life rooted in gratitude, what it brings us to do then is to love others whom we may not immediately see as having been a blessing to us. When we choose to feed the poor who are not people known to us, we aren't receiving a blessing from them. We aren't getting anything necessarily from them, but we are loving as God has loved us. We are loving and caring and reaching out to others. And in doing that, we are loving God. It's not like there's two separate commandments, like in this drawer are knives and forks, over here are spoons and cooking utensils. It is that together, it is the manifestation of one love. As St. John tells us in his first letter, he who says he loves God but hates his neighbor is a liar. To love God is to love others and to respond to that love by giving people the best we can give them according to their circumstances and according to our circumstances. Love is not an idea. Love is an action. To love God, then, is to stop and listen, to come to know him, And the way we come to know him is by speaking to him and listening to him, by being guided by the church to come as the family of God, as the other children of God, to learn to listen so that we know God as he is and we can respond. We call that prayer. We have private prayer, our personal prayer, and we have our public prayer, the liturgy itself. And then to love our neighbor is a response to God's love for us, for we imitate him, and imitation is the highest form of flattery.